Welcome everybody to the Apprentice Adventurer channel. In today's video, how does the iconic 25-year-old Suzuki DRZ400E stack up against some of the more modern competition? I think you'll be quite surprised how well it actually does. I am going to compare the DRZ400E against the KTM 390 Enduro R, the Honda CRF450RL, its new brother, the Suzuki DRZ4S, and a bit of a bigger bike, the Husky FE501. I have selected these bikes because they do attract riders that like to do the smaller dual sports adventure bike builds on them. They don't have a rally design and they can all equally be a pretty decent enduro bike in my opinion. So let's get into the comparisons. I'll run through each bike individually and then I'll give you my final thoughts. The DRZ400E we will start with, however, just so you know, a fair bit of conflicting information on the internet these days, but through a combination of my own owner's manual and the most accurate sites, this is what I got. So, apologies in advance if it's a couple of numbers higher or lower here or there. The power, 39 horsepower, ground clearance, 320 mil. The current fuel tank is 7 litres. They used to be 10 litres, but they are 7 litres now. The claimed dry weight for the most accurate source was 133 kilos. Service intervals, that is based off my own owner's manual, 6,000 kilometres for oil and 24,000 kilometres for valves. Unfortunately, it is still a 5-speed. The seat height, 930 mil. Now for overall components, basing off the Husky FE being 10 out of 10, I've given the components and their quality a 6 out of 10 on the DRZ400E. We've got to remember, guys, it's a 25-year-old bike with 25-year-old technology. The parts, basing this as 10 out of 10 being the best for parts and price and assessing spare parts, I've given the DRZ400E a 10 out of 10. And then the price, you can currently get that bike here in Australia for $10,500 and at times up to $11,500 depending on the time of year. The KTM 390 Enduro R, the claimed stats are 44 horsepower, 272 mil of travel, a 9 litre fuel tank, which is the largest out of this 5-bike range, a claimed dry weight of 159 kilos. The service intervals are pretty good, oil every 7,500 and valve clearance checks every 15,000. It is a 6-speed, which is great. It has a seat height of 890 mil, so it is the shorter bike of the 5. The overall components, I'm going to give that a 7 out of 10, remembering that the 10 out of 10 is just based on the best bike out of this range. The parts, assessing them and aftermarket prices, I'm going to give it a 6 out of 10, and then $10,500 to $11,500 seems to be the going rate depending on which time of year here in Australia. The Honda CRF450RL, to be honest guys, it's pretty hard to find some solid information on this bike in terms of being accurate, but from what I could find, the power was 38 horsepower, the ground clearance is 315 mil, the fuel tank is 7.6 litres, the claimed dry weight is approximately 124 kilograms, which is pretty good. Now this is where it really falls down. I believe this is accurate from what I could find on 2 sources. The service intervals, 1,000 kilometres for the oil and the valve checks every 3,000 kilometres, which I think is crazy for the Honda, but that is what I could find. It is a 6-speed, which is awesome. It has a height in the seat of 940 mil. Overall components, I'll give it an 8 out of 10. It's got pretty good specs. And the parts for accessibility and price, I think also 8 out of 10 will be a pretty fair guess on that one. And now for the newer brother of the DRZ, the DRZ4S. It has a claimed horsepower of 38, 300 mil of ground clearance, 8.7 litres of fuel, 142 kilos is the dry weight. Unfortunately, the service intervals, guys, I can't find anything accurate on it. So I'm just gonna write to be confirmed because I could be way off if I say it's like its older version. So let's just leave it as to be confirmed. It is a 5-speed, sadly. The seat height is a 935 mil. The overall components, I'm gonna list that as 8 out of 10, the same as the Honda. The parts, I was up in the air about this, so I'm going to give it a 9 out of 10 for accessibility, only because the older DRZ400 is so good. I can only assume the newer version will have easy parts to come by and will be relatively cheap as the years go on. And the price, once again, to be confirmed, but based off the American price, which I know is probably going to be overpriced, but 13.5 to 14.5 Australian dollars, but really guys, to be confirmed on that price point. And finally, the Husky FE501. Guys, I just wanted to put a bit of a bigger, higher spec bike in here to see where it all stacks up. Its claimed horsepower is 64, 343 mil of ground clearance, which is phenomenal. 8-litre tank. A bit of debate on the dry weight, but I came down to an average of 111 kilograms, which is phenomenal. Once again though, the service intervals fall really short, 1,000 kilometers for oil, and the valve clearance checks every 3,000 kilometers. It is a 6-speed. For the overall components, basing this bike as a high spec out of this 5, I've given it a 10 out of 10. And then the parts, probably similar to the KTM in terms of aftermarket access and price, I've given it a 6 out of 10. The seat height, I was surprised by this, the highest in the range, 952 mil. But the price here in Australia currently, they're going for anywhere from $19,500 to $20,500. It's no secret, I do own a DRZ400E. I absolutely love that bike. It's 2017 model, 8 years old. Nearly 45,000 kilometers on the clock. I travel all over Australia with it. I do day rides, overnight rides, enduro rides. Absolutely am the biggest proponent for such a bike. I am looking for a second bike, but that is not to replace the DRZ400E. I still believe and will always believe that it will be a highly sought after bike for the small dual sports market and will always be a good contender. So my final thoughts on the DRZ400E, guys, if you're sitting on the fence about buying one whilst they're still going, go and get one. You will not regret it long term. I've owned one for 8 years. As I've always said in my videos, they're not the best at anything, but they're pretty good at everything. And these stats show exactly that, if not second best in some of the stats. It's equal park in all of them other than the skis. The componentry on it, who cares if it's old school technology? You've got no electronics on the bike, easy to fix. If you're mechanically minded, you will be very, very happy with this bike. And it's got proven reliability, which the other bikes have yet to prove. So the DRZ400E, for what it is, guys, it is still a fantastic bike. And I strongly encourage you to get one if you have been considering it whilst they're still around. On that note, I hope you enjoyed the video, guys, and I'll catch you on the next one.